Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome along. Bustalgia is back on the road. I'm going to have to get used to saying this in the future. It's Wednesday night. You know what that means. Yes, a new night and a new time slot for Bustalgia. Here we go. We are back for a new season, and we're starting with a bang tonight. A wee versus one, something we've not done in a wee while. Last time we did one, it was Boric versus Foster, which was a very healthy debate to that one. But tonight, it's about arguably the two best centre-backs I think we've had in modern times. It's all about the guys with the triple barrel names, Virgil van Dijk and CCV, Cameron Carter-Vickers. So yes, we're looking forward to getting into that one. And as you can see, it is the OG time-travelling team. It is the original trio themselves. It is Russell Boyce joining me and Liam. How you doing, guys?
Yes, mate. All good here. All good. Looking forward to the new version of the old Bustalgia tonight, mate. Looking forward to it.
Same but different, as David Logue likes to say.
Same but different. Yeah, I like that.
Different. Liam, how you doing, mate? The wise man of the bus, Canada's favourite Tim. We're on a different night, mate. Here we are again on the Bustalgia Road.
Oh, this is good. It'll get me out earlier on a Friday so I can go out and have some fun.
Well, what you were telling us before we came on here, you were certainly having some fun last night on a Tuesday night as well. Rock and roll over there in Canada. Yeah. Mentally, you know, say you're one of the best characters on the bus. I always learn something new about you every time you come on, and yeah, more interesting stories to be had, certainly off screen there. But yeah, let's get rolling, guys. So yeah, see tonight, obviously we're on a different time, and so a couple of changes here and there for the viewers. You know, you're probably used to Bustalgia being what we call a marathon of a show. I'm trying to obviously cut a bit of the fat off of it tonight, so don't expect it to be 2+ hours. I've definitely got ways of bringing it down, but yeah, it'll still be all the same usual content that you get. We'll be doing a deep dive into the archives, looking back on both men's career, and of course, one of them is still very much a Celtic player. So yeah, I'll be talking about the last couple of years of CCV and obviously Virgil van Dijk. So before we go any further, I've not said this in a wee while, but I need to do all that good stuff. So of course, folks, help out the old algorithm CSC. You know, hit that like button, gets us obviously seen by more Celtic fans out there on YouTube and the recommended videos. Get involved in our live comments. Of course, I've got a poll tonight asking you guys, based on the Celtic time, who's better, Virgil van Dijk or Cameron Carter-Vickers? So it's just based on that. So obviously vote on that one. I'll check the results at the end of the show. Obviously get involved with sharing it on social media, whatever platform you wish, Twitter, Threads, whatever it is, whatever your bag is, Instagram. I know we've set up an Instagram page recently as well. So whatever your poison is when it comes to social media, make sure to share it. And of course, if you've only discovered the Boise Bus, you want to keep us in your lives that little bit longer, hit that subscribe button. Remember to hit that little bell notification, because then you will know when the bus is on the road. And last but not least, our sponsors up there in the corner, whatever side it is at, I always get it wrong. Bikesports.com, use the code BUS1888. Thank you, Russell. Thank you very much. Yes, code BUS1888.
50-50. I just guessed.
Always the same. So yeah, 12.5% off if you use the code BUS1888 on your Tasty Treat orders. And of course, what would Bustalgia be, guys? Without a wee bit of trivia to get you going. A wee trivia question to start the show, and we'll come back to the answers at the end as we normally do. So tonight's trivia has 7 answers, guys, and this is quite a good one. I've had this one before asked to me when I was in work one time, but tonight we'll be talking about Virgil van Dijk, obviously, and after leaving Celtic, he went down to ply his trade in the Premier League, where he still plays now. A very successful Dutch player down there. But can you name all the Dutch players who scored a hat-trick in an English Premier League game? There you go. So it's not necessarily a Celtic question, but there are 7 Dutch players to have scored a hat-trick in an English Premier League game. So we'll come back to those. There's a couple of crackers in there. You'll have heard of them, but it's a real deep thought on them. But yeah, that's tonight's trivia question. So yeah, let us get cracking into it then. So guys, I think this is quite incredible because obviously Bustalgia, it's a wee break from what's currently going on in the world of Celtic. You know, so we do a bit of a deep dive into the archives, bit of history, looking back, reminiscing. But obviously we're going to talk about both men, Carter-Vickers and Van Dijk joining Celtic. And I find this quite incredible because the way both of them joined Celtic, and you look at what's going on right now in the Celtic world, obviously we are smack bang in the middle of the transfer window, or maybe we're heading towards the end of the transfer window, depending on how you look at it. obviously there's a lot of talk, a lot of debate between fans about what's a marquee player and the type of players we're signing and the conditions he's been signed under, and is the manager signing them. So let's look at how they both joined, because one of the things that seems to get, turned a Celtic fan will turn their nose up at right now is what they call the old project signing. A player who's maybe cost about 2-3 million. They're young, nobody's really heard of them. They play for a club that's definitely not the same stature as us, maybe play in a league that's lower to us. Or if they do play in a league that's higher, it's a club that's definitely, I say, lower down the pecking order. So whenever we seem to be signing players like that, which we've done recently, so a lot of fans are turning their nose up. But that is how Virgil van Dijk came about, because, he was playing for Groningen, I believe it's pronounced, in the Eredivisie, as you like to say, Russell.
Eredivisie,
yes, indeed. 2013, but he ticks all of those boxes right now about, project players, fans that are turning their nose up at it. Safe to say he did more than all right. And if I remember, you've mentioned this before on the show, Russell, that he... Neil Lennon actually went out to watch him, but it seems that other scouts that were there at that game weren't actually there to watch Virgil van Dijk. So I've actually done a bit of research here to find out who possibly could they have been watching, because I'm amazed that nobody else was picking up on this. So fair play to Neil Lennon, who gets a lot of flack as well about, his taste in players and stuff like that, in terms of like who he signed, although he did have a good track record, especially in his first tenure at Celtic. But apparently that Groningen team that he went out to watch, there was a guy called Leandro Bacuna who signed for Aston Villa that summer, a midfielder, and also a boy who currently plays for Juventus nowadays called Filip Kostic, who also played for Eintracht Frankfurt. They were both playing in that team. So I wonder if that's who they were out watching. But either way, we locked in there, didn't we, Russell? Because nobody was picking up on how good Van Dijk was, but Neil Lennon certainly was. When he arrived in the summer of 2013, safe to say, early on, just from the first few games, you kind of knew this guy's a special talent, very special.
I think he turned around to Virgil on his first day at training and says, enjoy it whilst you're here, son. You won't be here for long. But that's what Lennon literally said to Van Dijk. And then there was another interview. You're right, I'd seen that he'd basically was sitting in where scouts would sit, that gantry, and he said he was the only person there. And he was like, this is bizarre. He said it was just weird, the environment he was in, but I don't know. A lot of it goes down in folklore, I suppose, and makes the sign and all that. You had a bit of romance to the tale, and it makes it all that bit more compelling, if you like. But, the Van Dijk one again, Neil Lennon watched him once, and I think he just was like, that's a player. And I think you get that sometimes. Sometimes you need to over-scout players, and you need to watch them time and again, and your gut isn't quite guiding you. Where I think with a Van Dijk, if your gut isn't guiding you on someone like him, then maybe football's just not your game.
Oh, aye, for a shadow of doubt. And early on, Liam, you could see this boy was about a player. Now you get those players, Liam, where you watch them and you go, early in the career, you just feel like they didn't start in the position that they're currently playing. I always felt that with Van Dijk. Could tell from early on, I was like, he's got to have started his career as a midfielder. He has to have. The way he would stroll through games, how easy it was for him just passing it out from the back. You could just tell right away, this guy isn't your usual, big clogger or a defender. Because obviously he had the physical attributes. But you look at him just the way he cruised through games. And say this is the time, this is shortly after Pep Guardiola's Barcelona team, sort of late 2000s, early 2010s. They began to really sweep the football world by storm, in Spain winning the 3 tournaments in a row. Every manager wanted to suddenly play passing out through the back, and you watch Van Dijk and you're like, wow. As I say, he just reeked to me of being like a midfielder, like a really classy central midfielder who happened to be really good at tackling as well. He was just that good at it, wasn't he?
He was good at that, and he just said he had a brilliant acceleration over 3 yards with the ball, which to get you out from your 18-yard box into the centre circle, he could do that. It looked like he was taking 3 steps. And he was there, cut it half, especially when we're watching him play in Scotland, and level wasn't as good. He just seems to stroll it. And, as far as playing in another position as well, was like, there was bits at the end of the game where if we weren't winning, we wanted him to go up as a striker and see if we could get on at something as well. He was just that versatile. And as you say, he didn't play like a big clugger or anything like that. He was a cultured football player. The only trigger red flag I had with him at the beginning was the man bun. You know, that was a bit suspect.
Yeah,
that's going to do. And, he's kept up with it. I'll give him that. You know,
he's maintained it all through his career. But when you're talking about just the way he would stride through games, I think the first goal he scored for the club was the one up at McDermott, where he picked up the ball basically just outside his own 18-yard box and pretty much, I wouldn't say ran the whole length of the park, but he just kind of strided his way up the park. I don't know how to really describe it, but he just breezed past the St Johnstone players and he just tucked it in the bottom corner from just outside the St Johnstone area, and it was like, unbelievable. Now, I was at Easter Road at a game we played in 2014 where he scored a free kick, direct for a free kick, just stepped up. I mean, I know Ronald Koeman was an expert of it, and he was obviously a Dutch centre-back, but just to see a centre-back just ping a free kick like that, you're just like, you're a freak of nature. You're clearly not, even though he's an amazing defender, but it's like, you just don't play like, he plays at a central midfield, a really classy midfield. So he would do it, did it through his career, but he starts a forward, moved back the way into the middle of the park, and then back to centre-back, but unbelievable. Just comes to a great line there in terms of like Dutch players. They're just such a class above at times with stuff like that. But then we move on quickly to I was talking about there with how Van Dijk joined and the conditions with him and how fans might turn their nose up. But then you look at how Carter-Vickers joined Russell, and again, deadline day comes into it here because he was a deadline day signing. He fitted into that category where we talked about these project players, but then he comes into the category of a guy who was at a Premier League team who wasn't looking like he was going to get registered for the Premier League squad, and was basically about to be loaned back out to Bournemouth. It fell through for whatever reason. Celtic got in there and got a deal done. And we've been talking, of course, recently many times on the bus in the run-up to this transfer window ending, about these are probably the type of players that we're going to have to be looking at, players that aren't quite going to make the cut for the top-end Premier League teams, that, you know, they're not going to get registered for the 25-man squad. We can maybe get in there and nick them. And again, a lot of fans are like, oh, we need even better than that. But then you look at a player like Carter-Vickers that we got from that exact type of condition, and it just shows you we're not swimming in bad waters there, are we, for shopping around there?
Well, definitely not. It was someone I think they'd identified earlier in the window, and it was a perfect case, an example of situations having to play out first. That's
yeah.
And you know, you look at the rewards of hanging fire, albeit it was a wee bit close for comfort, you know, in terms of when we actually got CCV. And I'm not advocating like all our players this summer coming in 1 minute to midnight. Do you know what I mean? I think then even my patience will have been pushed to its limit, and I'll be exasperated as well. It'd be a bit of a heart attack of a window as well. It'd be a bit panicking. However, we did wait. We got a man, and I think the proof is in the pudding just how successful he's been. Does it mean they would all be as good as that? No, it fucking doesn't. It doesn't mean that there's not. If there was a template for signing players or a textbook, if you like, that was flawless, and you could just continually follow it, then where would the fun in that be? Fuck that. Do you know what I mean? There's got to be a bit of jeopardy, a bit of entering the unknown. And with CCV, I think if you remember, there was an option to loan, but we knew that the option to buy, but originally a loan deal. But I think we all knew very early on it was around £6 million. And if I remember, the mood music was kind of more like £6 million for a Spurs reserve. Crazy talk.
Aye.
Then by January, we're all saying we would pay £10 million for him. So it just goes to show.
Oh, definitely. The narrative coming out of like Spurs is, you know, he wasn't ever good enough for them and so forth, which was weird when you see Ange go down there and you hear all these rumours about, we might take CCV back there. And it's like, but Spurs fans a couple of years ago were quite happy to see the back of him. They deemed he wasn't good enough. But yeah, I do remember at the time, you know, it was very, very, very close. I think it was a minute to midnight. The Celtic Twitter account put up the gif, the guy going, another one. And it was like, yeah, it was CCV, because there was a lot of rumours building throughout the day that it was happening. But yeah, we do get the famous picture, of course, of him, Giakoumakis and Jota all posing together. I mean, it wasn't quite the Steve Guppy, Momo Silla, John Hartson one with Martin O'Neill, the famous one from 2001. They're all standing together. But yeah, it was that was obviously on deadline day, and it was what a find it was, because Liam, he was coming. Unlike when Van Dijk came in at Celtic, we were in quite a strong position domestically where, let's be honest, there wasn't really a challenge at that point in time domestically. So it was always a cakewalk for Celtic at that point. But when Carter-Vickers was coming in, there was a fair few fires that needed put out, to say it lightly, because we'd lost, obviously, Hearts at that point in the first league game of the season. We'd been dumped at the Champions League qualifiers by Mcginlay's. We were still to play Alkmaar. I think he played at that. I can't know if he played in against Alkmaar, if he was registered in time for that. No, it wouldn't have been, because it was in deadline day time. So we'd qualified for the Europa League group stages at least. But yeah, we'd had quite a tumultuous start, to say the least, Liam. And Carter-Vickers came in, and it didn't take him long to sort of shore up that defence, because we certainly needed it, didn't we?
It didn't at all. I mean, he came in like ready. That's what I liked about when we got him. The only thing I saw that I thought was a negative was concerned about was his height. You know, when you look at somebody still coming into the team and you're seeing that picture of the new signings, and he's a foot taller than everybody else, and that's your centre back. Carter-Vickers looked very small compared to him. He was about the same height as Jota and those guys when released in. And so okay, well, maybe that's why he's had a hard time. It's like he's maybe not as good in the air. But for a guy that size, when he came in, that's what surprised me, how commanding he was in the air for his height. He was able to get up there. He doesn't lose a lot of aerial battles. And I thought that came in, that's what we needed. Somebody that could get in there, get up high, win the balls, and then he just sort of played himself into everybody's hearts in that way, where it was like he was built for us, I think, especially for Ange's system as well, controlling things, moving the ball, collecting it, getting it through the field. But isn't he panicking to him? You know, they call him the fridge. I don't think it's because he's so big. I think it's because he's so cool. You know, and the fact you never see him panicking or getting angry or screaming, shouting. Maybe once I think he squared up to a Rangers player once and kicked him off the ball. But cool and collected, and just rolled it for his first game. There was never any shaky moments with him, was there?
No, sometimes it needs to be the right scenario that you join in as well. And I think what he'd kind of realised very quickly, and maybe with the assistance of whatever part of the manager gave him when he was first joining, I think we need to look at it and go, do you know what I mean? He had an extra layer of responsibility, considering he was a new signing, and I think that played into his hands. I think that made him a better player for us. The fact that when he came in, he had to be the main man in defence, not the one joining an already sort of seasoned Celtic centre half and becoming the new aspect of that partnership. What he was actually doing was, you're going to be the foundation of the new Celtic defence. You're going to be a leader at the back. I think he thrived on that. I think it's probably quite a good thing that it happens when you've been loaned out as many times as his, feeling like a support act in each role that he's played so far, and then going into a lead character role, such as being the main centre back at Celtic. And I think obviously with Starfelt coming, he moved from Russia. Obviously, English not his native tongue, and probably not as natural a confident sort of persona on the park. I mean, and maybe CCV just realised very quickly that he was going to have a hell of a lot of responsibility at Celtic, and decided that he was going to grab that with both hands. And I think what it's done is actually lead him on to having such a successful spell at Celtic, has been that layer of responsibility, not just because he's a good player, because he is clearly a good player, but I think just the scenario he walked into suited him.
The one thing I was going to bring up, though, when we were talking about, strengths in that game, and William saying, like, he strolls through it. Have you ever noticed this, Russell, that he never lunges into tackles, Carter-Vickers? He's no, like, I mean, Van Dijk, to be fair, wasn't much for lunging in either. If he did slide in, it was usually timed impeccably. But you never see, like, a really reckless tackle from him. He very rarely gets beaten. I'd say, Liam, you're right to point out about, his height and that, because he isn't the 6 foot plus centre back. But again, he covers great ground, takes big strides, always gets back in time. But you never ever see him, like, recklessly diving in there and, making type mistakes. Obviously, his defensive partner for the last year and a half might have been a bit more prone to diving in at times. Not that he was always bad at it, but Carter-Vickers is definitely the more level-headed one. We definitely needed at the time when he came in. Say we'd lost the Hearts. I think we might have lost the Rangers at that point. Did he play in the first game against Rangers? Because him and Starfelt didn't obviously lose a league game together, but we'll obviously get on to talking about the centre-back pairings and so forth and the strengths and that with those ones. But yeah, let's say with Carter-Vickers, he just it was effortless. And again, you could understand right away when people were beginning to draw those comparisons with Carter-Vickers and saying he's the best centre-back since Virgil van Dijk. You could see it. Again, another one, very good at passing out of defence. That's sort of just very cool and calm. Again, another guy wouldn't surprise me if early in his career maybe he played a bit of midfield just the way he can sort of pass it around. But again, just brilliant when he came in and just, well, I say to this day, still very, very vital in the team, as we know, because when he's been out injured, and unfortunately a few injuries have crept in, we always have that bit of worry, a bit of doubt in our minds about him, and so forth, if things are going to go wrong, but not. Obviously, he was back at the weekend there, and he's obviously had to go off with a hamstring injury, so hopefully that's not going to be anything too long term. Because we can't be doing without him for a long spell, because he is a leader at the back. Now, in terms of say the strengths in their game and so on, let's talk about the guys that were alongside them. Then let's go on to that, because defensive centre back, traditionally most teams nowadays, it's always 4 at the back. I see 5s at the back are creeping in nowadays, and even a 3 at the back for some hipstery teams is coming back into fashion. But obviously, you never would only just play one centre back in a back line, so you've always got to have that partner alongside them. And Van Dijk, when he came in, a lot of people forget this, because the 2 seasons that he spent at Celtic, most people always associate Virgil van Dijk with Jason Denayer alongside him, which was his second season. But his first season, well, Lenny was in charge, he spent playing alongside Effie Ambrose for most of that season. And obviously that is a name that puts a lot of fear into Celtic fans when they reminisce about some of Effie's moments. But a strange fact from that season, the 2013-14 season, that is the year that Fraser Foster set the clean sheet record for the number of minutes not conceding a goal. And obviously, the goalkeeper has a lot to do, and we know how good Fraser Foster was, but in front of him, obviously, he needs a very steady centre-back pairing, and most of those games were Virgil van Dijk and Effie Ambrose. I was at the game at Tynecastle when he broke the record when he officially passed the number of minutes, and I remember just a few minutes before he officially got to that point, Effie Ambrose played an absolute clanger of a back pass to him, and he nearly fluffed it, and it was like that would have just been so typical, like 2 or 3 minutes before he's reached the milestone moment, and that happens. But it was a credit to Van Dijk as well that Effie Ambrose, he could elevate him to that point, because what we saw the next season when he was alongside Denayer, they were just seamless together. But then once Van Dijk left, and we were left with a back line of Ambrose, Tyler Blackett, Siminovic, who was always injured. We were a bit all over the place in that season. But that one with Van Dijk, now you kind of forget, for all the clangers Ambrose had, Russell, you kind of forget that season that he was alongside Virgil for most of that season. And again, just shows you how good Virgil was. He could help him through those games because he needed that steady head alongside him.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, then maybe there's the same argument you can apply to Virgil van Dijk. He likes being the lead centre-back in his partnership. It's an Effie Ambrose. He liked to be the one who took the responsibility. That enhances his game. Then even after that, Jason Denayer, few years younger than him, was coming in on a loan spell from the sort of reserve set up at Man City, or whatever you call it. What do they call it? Under 23s, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And again, it was very much Van Dijk in the lead role, and I think that's how you get the best out of some players sometimes, and they've got that extra layer of responsibility. I think it's an interesting trait that both of them share, to be honest with you.
For a shadow of doubt. And the thing is, Liam, with the Denayer partnership, as I'm saying earlier on, talking about Van Dijk and how good he was at passing it out from the back, and I say we're just fresh off of the Barcelona revolution. Every manager wants to pass it out for the back, and here we found ourselves in a season where we had Denayer and Van Dijk playing alongside each other. It's one of the best centre-back partnerships I think I've ever seen at Celtic, and of course it's in a season where, as I say, domestically, nobody was really going to lay a glove on us that season. Did they get tested to their fullest? Maybe not, but they were brilliant together, the two of them. And here's a bit of a controversial hot take. There were some times I watched games during that season, and Danair had to bail Van Dijk out a couple of times. I remember two shaky games in particular in Europe where we played Dinamo Zagreb and Astra. Remember them, Romanian team, at Celtic Park, and we didn't have it all our own way that night. And there was a few moments where there was a few clangers at the back, and Danair had to sort of sweep up for Van Dijk, but the two of them did ultimately complement each other really well. And it was quite gutting as well that we could never work out a deal full time for Danair, because he became one of those guys like a Patrick Roberts. Every transfer window that happened after he left, it was like, get him back, bring him back. But he went off to like Lyon and Galatasaray. I think he was captain of Lyon at some point as well. But yeah, he was a classy defender. The two of them just complemented each other so well, didn't they?
One of my favourite pairings of centre backs that we ever had. I thought the two fantastic together. Gave you a lot of confidence around corner kicks, not just in our end defending them. They could always get ahead to it. It can always get. I liked it. Denier had his like telescopic legs. He could always just, when you thought it was going by him, he just reach out and catch it. And the two of them were like that. And then what it did is something we've not seen in ages. It made us a threat at corner kicks. With both Denier and Van Dijk, we hadn't had that in a long, long time. And that's what I liked about that. So when we did get a corner kick, we were getting headers on goal. And it was coming for they two. And they must have been a nightmare to mark with two of them, We had other team as well that could, body it about as well. And so I think that was the last time we were really good and effective with corner kicks. Is that like, we've never really got back there now. Now I don't have the same anticipation when we get a corner. This could be a goal. It's very, very rarely, And then in the other end, oh, geez, I just shut my eyes,
It's weird because even nowadays when we do score off a corner, it feels like a massive event. Like, oh my God, we've actually scored off a corner. It's becoming that few and far between. But in that season in particular, I think Danair weighed in with about 7 goals alone, just from corner kicks at set pieces.
Stan Varga levels.
Stan Varga levels, It's always handy to have a centre back that can come forward at a set piece. And Van Dijk were just, absolute machines, getting his goals at both ends. I say Van Dijk could finish with his feet, as he showed many times. He wasn't just all about height, just heading into the net. But I was a superb partnership. But obviously, Russell, we talk about partnerships. And again, Carter-Vickers, talk about the one with Starfelt, the incredible stat that they never, ever lost a league game that they started together. The only domestic game that they lost together was one that came deep into extra time against Rangers in the Scottish Cup game, but over 90 minutes domestically, they were undefeated, which was quite an incredible stat. And again, when you look at still some of the flack that Starfelt was getting to this day, obviously he's now left. There were some fans that just couldn't, no matter what Starfelt did, it was always a case of not good enough, whatever. Always just written them off from day one. But at the end of the day, when it comes to centre back, it's a partnership. It's the two of them have to do their bit, and they were. I think the evidence speaks for itself in that partnership. There, they didn't lose. It must have been about 60 plus something games in the end. It must have been overall. I don't know the exact number what it was, because if they first played together, I think maybe like 7 league games into Angie's first season, and then I think they were pretty much together.
48 domestic games, I think it was, together.
It's incredible if that's the case. That is
48. I'm sure it was when he left. It was 48 domestic games, which is astonishing. Obviously, you've got to remember injuries and things into account. That's why it's not a higher number. But 48 domestic games completely unbeaten. I think that's fantastic. No two ways about it. I think you're right. You've got to worry about the partnership. And again, I'm someone who thinks we can improve on Joe Hart, for example. I thought that last summer as well, if I'm being brutally honest. But the goalkeeper that you've got behind you plays a role in that as well, and the communication and stuff between the two centre halves and then the goalkeeper behind them, the last line of defence, if you like. It is vital that they're all sort of in tandem and singing for the same hymn sheet. You know what I mean?
Oh, fair doubt. And a quick question here just on Van Dijk to both of you, just going back to him. Obviously, when he left us, he went to Southampton and then went on to Liverpool, and we know what he's done since then. Do you think he was good enough to go straight to Liverpool from us? Or do you think he needed that move to Southampton to become the player that he was. Because I can't remember which pundit it was, I saw like a year or two ago talking about it. It said that Liverpool should have cut out the middleman essentially and just came and got him right away off of Celtic because you could see he was good enough. But what do you guys think, Liam? Do you think he was good enough to just go straight into the Liverpool team? Because keep in mind, if they'd signed him in 2015, 2016, it would have been Brendan Rodgers would have been the Liverpool manager at that point in time. And even though that Liverpool team came very close a couple of years before to winning the Premier League, they'd actually lost a few of the big name players that got them close. So they'd went a wee bit back the way. Brendan Rodgers obviously is criticised a lot by many Celtic fans about his transfers, particularly at Liverpool, where he wasted so much money from, I think it was the Suarez deal. So you have to take into account, I think the Liverpool, I can't remember who would have been their centre-backs at that point. Would Skertel still have been playing? I can't even remember at that point in time. But would he have been good enough to walk at a Liverpool team, or did he need that sort of to go down to Southampton and get a feel for the league first and show them what he can do?
I think it's two things there. I think he helped make that Liverpool team what it became. The Liverpool team that we look at, that successful run and all that, Van Dijk, a big part of that. Could he have walked into that team? Absolutely.
There's Brown Warriors saying it was Martin Skertel and Daniel Agger that were the centre-backs at that point in time. So I think he probably could have then, yes.
And I think he got caps around about that time as well for Holland when he played with us. He got his first caps at Holland playing with us, South. And so he was already recognised, and you could see that he was getting, he was on the international stage as well, that they couldn't keep him out, which was at that time a really good Holland team. Still is. I think he's captain. But
yes.
I think he could have definitely walked in. I mean, must have been before Rodgers had his Celtic TV subscription then, watching our every game. Because he would have seen a hell of a player that kind of walked right in and helped his team that he was managing. So I walked into our team. He didn't need to go to Southampton. In fact, that was just, we could have used that money, But then again, would they paid us the same, was it 80 million he went for?
He went for 75 million. At one point in time, he was the most expensive defender in the world till Harry Maguire went to Manchester United for 80 million, which is baffling when you think about the ability of the players, because there's no doubt about it, and it's not hyperbole to say it. There was a point in time just a few years ago where Virgil van Dijk was the best defender in the world. That's how good he was. Yeah, there was genuine stats out there where no player was able to dribble past him for the entire season. Like in one-on-one duels where players running at him, he always beat them, always got the ball off them, no problem. And it was like, man, this guy's an absolute rock. And it's like he played for us. He passed through our club. It's astounding to see that he went on to become the best defender. But here's the thing as well, in terms of domestically as well, Russell, with Van Dijk. Obviously didn't suffer his reputation, but would you like to saw him have a bit more of a test domestically? Because, see, I think winning, we never get bored of winning. It's not our fault what happened with Rangers happened. But we did have one fleeting match with Rangers during that time when Van Dijk was here. And it's actually quite remembered. It's a pure meme-worthy moment where, I want to say, was it Nicky Law or Nicky Clark, whoever, was trying to win the ball off him. And he just swats him aside, just like, I
know the moment.
As he's running forward. It was that League Cup semi-final. And I know they were in the second division or whatnot, but there's a wee bit of me that's like, I wonder if they were still in the Premier League at that point and were a reasonable challenge. How would it have been? Because when we played them in that game, it was over by half an hour in. But yeah, it would have been interesting to see domestically, because teams like Aberdeen and that, they weren't going to mount a challenge over the 38 games, but ultimately didn't, affect his reputation, because look what he's gone on to do since then. But yeah, there's a wee bit of me that thinks, just if there was a significant challenge the couple of seasons, how would he have coped with it? Probably pretty well, I would guess, Russell.
Yeah, I don't think he makes any odds, to be honest with you. What he would do domestically, I think, was, whoever it is he was up against, he would have been able to treat with like it was a kickabout in the playground. If it was the high school players against primary school players, something like that, do you know what I mean? I think he was very, very much more than capable of dealing with anything that would be thrown his way domestically. Just quickly on why he went to Southampton before Liverpool, I think that still came down to the kind of snobby sort of attitude. And I think not because Liverpool or Brendan, for example, wouldn't want to part the ways with the money, but to actually try to convince the board of whoever's in charge, like at a Liverpool, that is 13, 14 million of the budget on a Celtic player who maybe you could use the argument don't have any domestic competition, things like this, and I wonder if that becomes more appealing, shall we say, to Southampton, who go, we'll sell this guy on.
Yeah.
Whereas when a Liverpool come into play, they need to sign the player when it comes to that sort of money back then, which would be the equivalent of about 25, 30 million now. They need to be in the first team. They don't sign with their ambition to sell them on. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So in Southampton, you've got that kind of, well, there's potential here that they'll be more willing to do that. Whereas at Liverpool, because the standard would be so high, coming straight for Scotland into their first team, I don't know, it's probably just a bit of ignorance, I think, involved there, to be perfectly honest with you.
Aye, it was. Well, how much did we get for him in the end, by the way? How much did you say that we got?
It was 13 million, I think, up front. And then I'm sure we were 10% of his next fee. So, but it'll be minus whatever the 30 million. So he went for 75, take away your 13, 62, 6.2 million, 19 million all in.
I'd say that's in the relation to the market we're in, that's pretty good value for money in the end. It would be nice to have got 75 million for them that Liverpool paid in the end, but realistically, that's never going to happen for us. But no, overall, I'd say value that is value for money. And the thing was, the writing was on the wall, wasn't it, Liam? He was always a player that you just kind of knew. He always had that eye on the next move. I know we've also talked recently about some of our recent arrivals. Mr. Kwon from South Korea has come in and said that I'm going to be the best player at the club and I'm going to move to the Bundesliga or the Premier League and all this stuff. Most players, I mean, all these guys that do come into the club, they might not say it like Kwon's done, but they've always got their eye on that move to the next league, because as much as we hate to admit it and accept it, but there is still an element of stepping stone FC with Celtic. That's just sadly the waters that we swim in. But you just knew, again, just from early days, right up to the day that he left, and as Russell said at the top of the show, Neil Lennon told him, enjoy it while you're here. But yeah, you could tell that he was destined for bigger and better things, wasn't it, Liam? And you're just ruining the day. Because if I remember right, his sort of last action at the club was the loss to Malmo in Ronnie's second season, where we were just dreadful that night. And as soon as we were at the Champions League that night, you knew, well, we've missed it in Champions League riches again. The club's going to have to supplement it somehow. So you knew the writing was on the wall when I played one more league game that Saturday against St Johnstone, and that was his final game. And off he went before the transfer window. But again, it's something we talk about, Liam. It's the reinvestment after that, because then the question is, well, what did Celtic do with that money? You know, they've just lost a player, the quality of Virgil van Dijk. What did they do with him? What did they do to replace it? And it's like, Tyler Blackett on loan. Siminovic, who would come onto a game eventually if he could stay fit. But that first season under Ronnie, he was just out all the time injured. And it was like, man, we got it so wrong in that one. But yeah, when that sort of feeling starts to creep in, Liam, the pit of your stomach, you're just like, this is the end, isn't it? We need to get ready to say our goodbyes. It's always a hard moment, isn't it?
Aye, and you could see it as well. You could see it in the players' performance as well. You know, there was bits of rolling by and making it look easy. And then, as you said earlier, there was these moments of craziness as well where Denier had to bail him out, where it just looked like the player was getting... Sometimes it gets not too easy because it's still professional and it's still hard football. Mm-hmm. But your focus doesn't have to be as mentally sharp. And I think players realise that as well too, that if I start getting too casual, you know, then my game will suffer. And so for him to challenge himself, I mean, plenty of opportunities to challenge himself in Europe, but I think he wanted to go down south and just play in a bigger league. And also his agent must have been talking to him non-stop as well. I mean, he's Celtic, he's now playing for Holland. And
you wonder if his agent as well, Liam, I bet his agent's saying to him, pal, look, like, this is your gateway. This is the only way you're going to get to where we all think, including yourself, think you belong. And that will be a top 6 English side, and, you know, preferably Liverpool. I think he said that was always where he wanted to end up, and he did. But if you've got any aspirations of that, unfortunately, going direct for Celtic to one of those ain't gonna fly for whatever reason that may be. So, whilst I think Virgil van Dijk was desperate to play for Southampton per se. No,
No.
I think, though, it had been laid out to him, probably a pathway by his agent going, you go down there and do what we all know you can do, and it won't be long before, boom, you're at one of the big guns, and hopefully that'll be Liverpool in Van Dijk's case. It was.
Well, in terms of pathways, I mean, Southampton pretty much signposted it very well because they are literally the pathway to Liverpool, because this was at the time when they were signing all sorts of players. Adam Lallana, Ricky Lambert, they all went from Southampton to Liverpool. They say Virgil van Dijk's another one. They've signed quite a few over the years. They've went straight from Southampton to Liverpool. So, yeah, if you are a football player aspiring to play for Liverpool one day, you should probably try and move to Southampton. That's usually where they go to for their players.
And if you want to play for Southampton one day, join Celtic.
Join Celtic, yeah. I know. They come after our players all the time.
We've certainly sold. Do you know what I mean? Like, plenty to them.
And also, just a wee side note comment that just came in.
Right, Liam's talking. I don't know why it keeps going silent when Liam's talking. I don't know what's going on when he's speaking. It's going. Sorry, Liam, pal.
On you go, Liam, mate.
Says we should just play for Manchester City reserves and you'll get a game for Celtic.
That's true, actually. Yeah. Peter Lawwell will be on the phone. Peter and Mark Lawwell. Any we can take on loan from you? And also, just a wee side note, Edward Moore coming in with, well, Johan Mjällby, obviously. Come on, man. Johan Mjällby or Carl Starfelt, who was better? Mjällby every day of the week on that one, I'm afraid.
Johan, easy one.
Big time.
But yeah, what an interesting cycle. Man City reserves gets you a move to Celtic, guaranteed if you don't get in the Man City team. Do well at Celtic, gets you a move to Southampton, guaranteed. Do well at Southampton, gets you a move to Liverpool, guaranteed. What a mad cycle we're part of.
As now, let's concentrate though. We've talked most about the domestic stuff. So obviously the benchmark, particularly right now, it's very much in vogue to talk about is Europe, because obviously Brendan Rodgers has came back, so we try and make us a force in Europe. Obviously, both players when they were, Van Dijk was at Celtic, obviously Carter-Vickers is still at Celtic. They've had a tilt at Europe. They've had a few games here in it. So let's see how they've done compared to the domestic stuff. So say domestically, when you look at it, when Van Dijk joined, there wasn't much of a challenge domestically. We didn't win as many trophies as we should have, to be fair, during that era where Celtic definitely took their eye off the ball. It was ironically when Rangers were in the top flight, suddenly Celtic began sweeping up trophies. Left right side trebles became the norm. In fact, last season we won a treble. Carter-Vickers was very much part of that. And the season before that, we won 2 trophies. So he's won 5 trophies 2 years. And I believe Van Dijk's record is only 3 trophies in 2 years. He only won the league in Neil Lennon's last season in that first one. And then the second season that he played under Ronnie, we won the League Cup and we won the league. So he only won 3 trophies over the 2 seasons. To say for whatever reason, Celtic just kept choking at Hampden, it seemed, during that era as well. But in Europe, this is where I think both guys have got a bit of similarity here. And it's not all necessarily their fault, but the European record doesn't do them justice. And I say it's not necessarily their fault, because Celtic have been pretty bad in Europe at times over the last decade or even longer, depending how far back you want to go. But like we've talked with Virgil van Dijk that I said earlier on, I can remember games against Dynamo Zagreb and Astra in the Conference League group stages. That season where we had to close the entire top tier of the stadium because the interest was so just so flat over the Conference League, especially not the Europa League, especially with the group that we got that year, which was Salzburg, Zagreb, and Astra. But nowadays, if you talk about the idea of us getting to a final of Europa League or win it, Jesus, man, that's like, oh, hell yes. But back then, yeah, real oh no, don't want to buy tickets. I had to close the top half of the stadium. But against Zagreb and against Astra, I can remember a few shaky moments where Craig Gordon had to berate both him and Jason Denayer for basically I remember one with Zagreb were right through on goal, but it was a mix-up between the two of them out wide. They both went for the same ball, ran into each other, and it resulted in a one-on-one chance that Craig Gordon had to save. But I think the game that people remember during that era was the second round. We went on and played Inter Milan, and it was a word I've not used in a while on here, a slobber knocker of a game, a 3-each draw at Celtic Park that night. And Virgil van Dijk, again, like most teams, I don't know if they were just shell-shocked or something, because we'd done all right in that group stage against so-so opposition, but then Inter, they're like a powerhouse. They're like European giants came to town. And every goal that night was just a total calamity, especially the second one. I can remember Van Dijk. The ball just bounced around like a pinball in the box, and he just looked completely flat-footed. and it was Rodrigo Palacio that scored the goal. And then the second leg, I don't remember this, Russell, but in the second leg, we went with a free each draw. We got 3 away goals against us because away goals were still a thing. But we started the second leg in the San Siro really well, and Gary Mackay-Steven, of all people, was terrorising the Inter defence. But then Virgil van Dijk gets 2 yellow cards in the first half and gets himself sent off. And then Ronnie Dyler, obviously he's got to patch up the defence because we're a man down. He took off Gary Mackay-Steven, who was our best player at that point. And we were actually playing really well, but Inter scored a goal with about 5 minutes to go in the game to win 4-3 on aggregate, but they were going to go through on away goals. But we started that game so well. But Van Dijk just had a total brain fart that night. We were getting 2 yellow cards in the first half, and it was like, see, for all the good stuff he was doing domestically for us in Europe, let himself down there, and there was a few clanger moments where it was just like, you know, you're playing against a lower opposition week in, week out in the league, and then you have to make that step up to Europe. And just a few mistakes were creeping in. And as we find out enough times, Russell, in Europe, you make mistakes there, you're going to get punished, unlike in the SPL, where you might get away with it from time to time. But getting sent off in the San Siro, it was like, that was it. We were done that night. There was no chance of us coming back.
Yeah, I mean, whilst no careers are flawless, no Celtic career that you have, whether it's only a couple of years or not, are, you know, without imperfection. I think sometimes it's very easy to retrospectively look and only remember the good things. I think there was a debate going on in the live chat the other night where, you know, they were talking that Henrik Larsson had never missed a decent opportunity. I think that Frank guy was saying, and it's like, yes, he did. He did miss chances. Just, you need to look back and actually have a deeper dive to remember the more negative sort of moments. And that definitely is one from Van Dijk's point of view, particularly when he was one of your elite players that you really needed to kind of step up at that time. I just think everything was a bit disenfranchised then, to be perfectly honest with you. Big Chunks has just jumped in. Look at that. Thanks so much, mate. That's really kind.
Thanks.
Cheers, Chunks.
And yes, I have, to answer Chunk's question. Yes, I have. I've been on a crusade recently.
To nice one.
Yeah, so I've been, my numbers are
looking
pretty good,
mate. There you go, Phil. That's motivation there. That's class.
Yeah, that is motivation. So thanks for noticing. Thank you, and thanks for the donation as always, Chunks.
Love that. Thank you. Thanks,
cheers,
Chunks, mate.
Cheers. But yeah, also speaking in Europe as well with Van Dijk, he was also part of, just going back to the season before. Liam, do you remember the Champions League group that we got in Neil Lennon's last season as well? The absolute group of hell. Because again, I always feel like Celtic just seem to get some of the worst luck in Europe. And yeah, the group of death, Barcelona, AC Milan, and Ajax, all in the same group. And yeah, Van Dijk played in that one, and that was one of the worst. After what we did the season before in the Champions League, ironically without Van Dijk and Effie Ambrose and Kelvin Wilson at the back, get to the second round. But yeah, we get tanked 6-1 off Barca in the new camp. AC Milan came to town and beat us 3-0 at Celtic Park. We never even laid a glove on Ajax in the game in Amsterdam when they were there for the taking. They weren't even that spectacular. But yeah, say with European stuff, it just wasn't. I'd say it's not all Van Dijk's fault. End of the day, Celtic have had some horrific bad nights in Europe in the last decade, 15 years or whatever. But yeah, he just happened to be in the wrong place in the wrong time that season, didn't he? Liam would be in that group of all ones. Because I remember when the group draw was made and that came out, because AC Milan, I think, were in the second pot, Barca were on the top pot, and Ajax were the third pot. And it's like, we've literally got the 3 possible hardest teams you could get from each pot, and we've managed to pull them. It's just like, and I'm hoping to God in a couple of weeks when we get the draw, Liam, that's not what we see, a group of that type of caliber. Please, for the love of God, no.
I don't know. Sometimes we seem to do better when we get a group like that than when we do get an easier group like when we got last year. Know that Real Madrid was easy, but the other 2 teams are definitely forbidden. You know, I like it when we play against those big teams. I remember that team that was being advertised as it was a group of champions. Remember?
So it was, yes. Group of champions, aye.
Probably 4 teams where every single team had won the cup.
That's right, aye.
And that was it. And I mean, that was a good showcase for him, but he never exactly strolled it in that one, did he? He didn't stand out as much as he was doing in the Scottish League. And that's sometimes you can get that. That's why he had the go to Southampton move before Liverpool and that as well, was he didn't seem to be able to stand up and do it in Champions Leagues at that point. He wasn't really making himself impressive. And that might have been the players round about him, and that might have been You know, I think we were still playing swap and switch with Neil Beaton and Effie Ambrose and all the guys, you know, who was beside at the time, you know. It was sort of us coming down anyway, and Neil would just sort of like, I don't know if he'd lost the dressing room, but it certainly, I don't know, something wasn't clicking at that point anyway, you know.
Yeah. Well, Alistair Jack, remember the facts there. The Ajax win at home is our last home win in the Champions League. And when you think what we did to teams in the 2000s in the Champions League at Celtic Park, that is a sobering fact. And hopefully that will change this coming season. And one man, Russell, that could play a key part in that is obviously Cameron Carter-Vickers. Last season, we talked about it many times on episodes of the Bus, talk about last season's European campaign and how crucial it was that Carter-Vickers and Starfelt missed so many games. I think Starfelt, did he miss, 5 of the 6 games, and Carter-Vickers was out for like 2 or 3 of them as well, but the 2 of them didn't play together at any point in any of those group stage games last season. And funny enough, in the run-up to the end of the season, we kept saying about, Ange next season, they'll be pinning his hopes on that. It'll be so crucial for him. And now Ange is gone and Starfelt's gone, but Carter-Vickers still remains. So he is so crucial this season, especially with what Brendan said about, we want to make a mark in Europe. They're the type of guys he's going to be relying on to have blinding games, because we are going to be under the cosh at times in some of these matches next season, and it's going to be massively vital to have him, step up and be that leader at the back.
Oh, absolutely it is. I mean, he's going into his 3rd season at Celtic now. So if he had responsibility when he first came in, when you counter the fact, like you just laid out there, the facts that you just laid out, and you consider the manager that brought him in is now away. His partner in crime, if you like, Carl Starfelt, 48 games domestic unbeaten, is also away. The signings that we've made so far definitely seem to be of an ilk where they're going to be younger players that need a wee bit of guidance. That, you look at the Lager signing, what's called
the Lager
Rocky that have signed, right? You look at those two, mate, and let's be real here. Both of them are of an age of 22, 23 tops. They're going to need a bit of guidance. Now, Cameron Carter-Vickers is no veteran by any stage. What is he, 25? 26?
Something like that, in mid-20s anyway, yeah.
But he now finds himself in a position of being the oldest defender at Celtic right now. Bizarrely.
He does, yeah. He does.
Yeah, because Johnson and Ralston are younger than that. Taylor will be 24, 25. And Taylor doesn't exist, obviously, when Liam's on.
That's right, yes.
Bernabé's younger. So, I mean, you look at the centre halves, Lager, Rocky, and Welsh. I mean, they're all much younger than CCV. So he's got a different level of responsibility now, which again, if we follow the template of when he joined, and if we look at that timeline of events, he thrived and played his best football because of that extra responsibility. Now we're going up a notch.
Yeah.
And now and he also, you need to remember, is in the tournament that all footballers want to play, and that is the Champions League. So that combined with the extra responsibility, I wonder where he is in the leadership group, as it will be known. Is he vice captain? Maybe. Is Joe Hart vice captain?
Yeah, he in games when Callum McGregor was playing, I said most people thought Joe Hart was going to get the armband, and it was Carter-Vickers was doing the armband. That's right.
So there's loads of different avenues you can look at it. I think he'll thrive. Yeah. That doesn't mean we'll win any football matches in the tournament. We hope to, and we really want to. But as you say, there's so many pitfalls that can come with it. But with CCV at the back, we know we've got a better chance than without him. So hopefully he gets back to full fitness in time for the beginning of the group campaign, and that he plays 6 out of 6 games. I think that would be vital for us to have any sort of remote chance of making a dent, whether it be second place or a third place finish.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to a change with tactically how we set out. And I'm going to use Brown Warrior's favourite word, because I know he's in the chat right now. Pragmatic is definitely something we're going to have to be, because obviously Carter-Vickers has got experience of playing in Europe in the last 2 seasons under Ange, where we had a game in the Europa League in Ange's first season where we scored 3 goals away from home against Real Betis, and we still lost 4-3. We were beaten by Leverkusen 2-1 with 10 minutes to go. We lost 3-2. And then we get gubbed 4-0 at home by Leverkusen as well. We dropped into the Conference League and thought, right, okay, we were in a pretty tough group there. We having a Spanish team and a German team, but we're in the Conference League. We fancy a chance here. Beat by Bodo Glimt convincingly over 2 legs, and he played obviously in that home leg where they just came to town and schooled us. So hopefully he's learned from that. And they say last season the Champions League, I think he only played like 2 games, whatever, for injury. So hopefully, he's picked up from any errors that were in the type of games. So if the manager sets out the team correctly, and that word pragmatic, because that's something that Rodgers wasn't in his first spell as Celtic manager. When it went to European games, he took a lot of flack for the Barcelona performance, where he was very vocal in the run-up to it about, no, I'm going to keep playing the way we've been playing, and then they put 7 past us in the new camp. So all of it's going to come down to that as well. And so the luck of the draw is going to be a massive part of it. So we shall see what obviously comes of that. But he's going to be a huge, huge figure for us in this coming season. If we are going to make a dent in Europe, then he's going to play a big part. And because leaking goals, I say it so many times on here, I always feel, and it's not just because I'm a Celtic fan, the woe always me, but I do feel that Celtic lose some of the worst goals in European football. And it's like only Celtic could lose that goal. Only that could happen to us. So hopefully, he's the leader at the back that can stop us from losing some of those stupid goals. Now, as I said, Bustalgia is now going to be a bit of a shorter format with cutting the fat off. So we're getting near the end now to wrap it up. So the final sort of thing to analyse then is, based on their times at Celtic, guys, who's better? I know that Carter-Vickers is still at Celtic, but he's played 2 full seasons. Van Dijk had 2 full seasons. So if we're going to talk about who is just the better player, it's going to be Van Dijk because of what he went on to do, because looking at his career. But just based on their 2 years at Celtic, I say weighing up how they did, say Van Dijk came to a Celtic team that had no real challenge domestically and cruised it, but Carter-Vickers did come to a Celtic team that had a challenge domestically. He even scored a very crucial goal at Ibrox, which arguably people say won us the league in 2022, and we got that 6-point gap, I think, in the sort of tail end of April when we went there and beat them 2-1. And it gave us just that wee cushion that we needed just to get over the line, essentially. But yeah, weighing up like their time at Celtic, who would get your vote as the better of the two, Russell?
Interesting, because you've got to weigh it up 2 different ways. Van Dijk came in with his only background playing for Groningen. Is that how you pronounce it? Groningen?
Yeah, we'll take that one. Yeah.
I know I like to say Eredivisie, but I don't know how to actually say Groningen. Fuck knows.
I think it's Groningen, but either way, it's a tough one to pronounce.
He certainly didn't have the same wealth of experience at playing at a proper, decent, competitive level or training with elite players that Cameron Carter-Vickers did. Cameron Carter-Vickers came in with a hell of a lot more of a background, I would say, than Van Dijk, of playing at decent levels. Cameron Carter-Vickers could argue his school was tougher because he was loaned out so many times, but I think that actually builds your experience and it more equips you to come into Celtic, whereas Van Dijk, coming from a stadium that holds about 10,000, 11,000, probably average gate, 6,000, 7,000 fans, to Celtic and just cruise it from minute one like a Rolls Royce, I think takes a hell of a lot. I think his jump was far higher than what Cameron Carter-Vickers was to join Celtic, yet Van Dijk made the transition just as smoothly as Cameron Carter-Vickers did. In terms of impact, look, they both won titles. They both won 2 titles, 2 years. Cameron Carter-Vickers is still there to try and win more right now. And neither of them have sparkled in the fleeting appearances they made in the Champions League for us. Cameron Carter-Vickers, you could say, was under a bit more pressure because of the competition, but if you're going to base everything on Rangers being there, then what the fuck does that even mean? For me, I think I always felt Van Dijk, I would have said, I felt was a better player. When I was a Celtic fan watching Van Dijk at the back, I was probably in the camp, I thought, he's a fucking different gravy, this guy. Whereas I think Cameron Carter-Vickers is good, but let's flip it to the conversation we had earlier. Would you think that Cameron Carter-Vickers could walk into a Liverpool team right now? No, you don't.
No.
You would struggle to get in that Liverpool team, I think. Whereas Van Dijk, we're questioning why he went to Southampton before he went to Liverpool. I think that tells you that in the 2 years you watched the two of them, without recency bias involved, without taking Rangers into account, I think in a Celtic shirt, Van Dijk's up there with as good a defender as I've ever seen play for us. Cameron Carter-Vickers, unbelievable as well, but I'm going to lean to VVD.
No, that's all fair and good. There's Monty coming in with the bit at the end of his comment. I would love to have the two of them on the same side. I saw Mark saying something the other day that apparently Van Dijk's removed all references of Liverpool for his social media. So, Brendan, pick up the phone, get on to Van Dijk. Maybe we can make it happen. Get him and Carter-Vickers at the back this season, because something's going on there if he's doing that. It's a bit cryptic and a bit odd. Maybe he's just pining for a new contract. Or maybe there's a Saudi Arabian offer in the works for Virgil van Dijk. Either way, it's a tantalising prospect. Imagine that, Liam. The two of them together. That'd be the best of both worlds, wouldn't it? That would solve everything. But no, in terms of yourself, Liam, let's say, weighing up the options, I think what Russell said there is very, very well put. You're weighing it up. Why just judge it on, the Rangers stuff and that, domestically, if that's what it means. Because, again, do I think Carter-Vickers is exceptional? Without a shadow of a doubt. Do I see him going on to have a career like what Virgil van Dijk has had? Probably not. You could see Van Dijk at that age and that time at Celtic was destined for big things. Carter-Vickers will go and play in the Premier League for a good level team. Is he going to play for the cream of the crop, Premier League winners? Jury's still out on that one. But what about yourself, Liam? What do you think out of the two of them? Who would get your vote based on their Celtic time, though?
If it's just based on Celtic, CCV, Cameron Carter. I think there's very, very few times where you could say, oh, that was a gaff that cost us a game, or, okay, he was really off form. I've never seen him play a game where he's been off form. Seen Van Dijk do it a few times. Seen him lose concentration, and give away goals, as we talked about earlier. You don't get that for CCV. And I think this is going to be a really telling season for him. Because, Starfelt was always playing out of position as well. So it'd be good to see if any of the new boys coming in are an actually left-sided back, and how much that's going to help CCV, knowing that someone's there to cover up is like naturally left-footed, it can play the ball quickly, doesn't have to get it under control and then pass it. And so that might free up some options. We might see him actually moving forward a wee bit more and just developing a wee bit more confidence on the other side of the park. I think he's a terrific anchor. Everything goes through him. Mm-hmm. What we don't have is those bursts of, when Van Dijk would just stroll it through the park, like game-changing. Callum does it a wee bit, like against Rangers and stuff like that. I'd love to see CCV do it, but if it's not his game, I'm happy with what he brings to it. I think he's a steady influence. I think Joe Hart probably helped him a lot early, settling into the team. And if I look at the two of them, I think CCV had a much tougher ride coming into Celtic with the team that we had and the uncertainty around it than what Van Dijk did. We already had a pretty established team at that point, and he came in and complemented, whereas when CCV came in, we were just building it. We didn't know who we were getting or what they were going to be like. It was trust Ange,
Trust the process. That's saying that we love around here.
Based on I'd get to Cameron Carter-Vickers.
And again, that's absolutely fair. But let's see what the viewers have said. I put a poll up at the start to see what they've said. So let's have a wee gander.
I'm going to predict it's CCV.
Okay, doke. So there's 103 votes. And
good number.
Virgil van Dijk, 56%. Carter-Vickers, 44%.
Tight. Matt is tight.
Yeah, so Van Dijk getting the nod getting the nod there from the viewers in the chat. So yeah, it's been there you go. I've actually managed to do a Bustalgia episode in just over an hour, guys. I knew I could do it if you're just trimming a wee bit of the fat. There you go. It's more condensed, like strange days. Good. Yeah. Yes. But before we go, obviously, guys, before we wrap it up, we've got a wee bit of trivia from the start of the show. And here's the thing: now that it's only about an hour long, you don't need to be like, "Oh God, what was the question from 3 hours ago?" It's only an hour ago, so hopefully you remember. But for people who came in late and didn't know, the question, because obviously we're talking about Virgil van Dijk tonight, Dutch player, he's gone down to the Premier League, done well. So there are 7 Dutch players in English Premier League history that have scored a hat-trick in a game. But can you name the 7 Dutch players?
Well, start with an obvious one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get to turn the comments off before it goes
next
as well. I'll turn the comments off. I'll start the obvious one, Ruud van Nistelrooy.
100%, yeah. He is the obvious.
Okay, I'll go with one. Pretty obvious. Dennis Bergkamp.
That is it. One of the best hat-tricks ever. Brilliant against Leicester.
I've got another reasonably obvious, I think. He probably did it for Man United a couple of times. Robin van Persie.
Did indeed. Done it for Arsenal and Man United. Yep.
All right, I'll go back to Arsenal again. Overmars. Is it Marco?
Yeah, Mark Overmars.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Well
I
done,
did
Liam.
not have him on the list. That's
One of the
shout.
midfielders that's in the list that scored a hat trick. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done, mate.
Arjen Robben?
Incredibly, no.
No.
Because Arjen
doing
Robben
so
that you
well.
got to Chelsea
This is like
was
sudden
young.
death all over again.
Aye.
Fucking hate these stupid quizzes.
I'll get another one. We talked about this before when somebody does a Schneider.
Oh, Wesley Sneijder's never played in the Premier League. He's never played in the Premier League, so it's a wrong answer, Liam. It's a wrong answer.
Liam, you're better than that, mate. You're better than that. Dirk Kuyt.
Yeah, correct. Dirk Kuyt is correct. Yep, he's one of the trickier answers, I feel.
So how many to go?
2 to go.
Are they obscure?
One of them is a very well-known one. The other one is the trickiest one out of them, but you'll know who it is. Like, the player is well-known, but you wouldn't have expected him to have a hat-trick on his CV.
Oh.
Morty coming in and saying Baricta. Well, that would be a shock if it was him, to be fair. That would be. Jesus.
Baricta. You know it, Monty.
God.
I don't know now. Oh, Rafa van der Vaart.
No. See, I guess I had this question put to me before in work, and I thought Van der Vaart was a certainty. He was brilliant at Tottenham.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't the right answer, Van der Vaart. No.
Okay, I've got one. Is it Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank?
Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank.
Yeah. Jimmy
So the last
Floyd,
one is the hardest one, and one of the reasons it's so difficult is because the guy is a central midfielder, and I say he's got a hat trick in a Premier League game. A centre mid. He currently still plays to this day. He's still playing at this point in time.
Oh, fuck.
And he plays in Italy right now.
Oh, Wijnaldum.
Wijnaldum for Newcastle scored a hat trick against Norwich. Yeah.
I think basically all I can say is Eredivisie in Dutch, and then all the other pronunciations are miles off it. But I don't know if fair dues with Wijnaldum. A couple of obscure ones I put down was Brian Roy.
Brian Roy, seen his name in the chat a few times earlier on.
Was it?
Brian
Roy was in Nottingham Forest, and I put Clive Wijnard as well. He was up.
Oh, wow.
And Wim Jonk. I thought one of them might
for Sheffield Wednesday,
I think they both played for Sheffield Wednesday, but I thought one of them might have just, that debut luck or something might have got a hat trick, then never scored for them again. But,
incredibly, who isn't a right answer is Pierre Van Hooijdonk, which was one that was guessed plenty of times in the chat. Pierre never scored a hat trick in the Premier League. Might have scored when they went down to the Championship with Nottingham Forest for a season. He might have scored one, but no in the Premier League. He didn't get one. Once he started trying, he did. But no, that wraps up the show. So we've got just over an hour. Bustalgia, the new look Bustalgia, nice and trimmed, slimmed down, and so just over an hour. So tomorrow night TNF is back, so that'll be another interesting one. Yeah, I think Steve will he be available for that, or is he on back shift? Yeah, okay.
I'm doing the full week, mate. I'll be 5 days in a row come tomorrow.
Oof. Well, Friday I did say there's going to be a show called That Friday Feeling. I'll either be hosting it, or David or Steve or whoever. Most likely it'll be me, because I've already got an idea of a few things. The format will be looking forward to the game at the weekend. It will mostly be League Cup themed. And what would be a Friday night for a wee bit of time traveling? I'm sure we'll be reminiscing about some favourite League Cup moments as well, because that's what I usually did on a Friday night anyway. So That Friday Feeling will be on, and whoever joins me. What about you, Lee? Join me on Friday night? We'll reunite on a Friday. Do you fancy it?
Definitely. I was looking forward to it.
No worries. There you go. We'll get that done then. Yeah, so that'll be on as well. So we've got content coming out all weeknights this week. And then Sunday, Celtic play into it. So it's PMP on Sunday for the Kilmarnock Viaplay Cup game. So that is what's coming up this week. So guys, we're out of here. Say Bustalgia wrapped up nice and quick tonight. And we will catch you tomorrow then for the TNF folks, and enjoy your night, whatever you're up to. See you then.
Ciao.